All right, and we are here. Another, for me, another pivot into the comic sector. I am so beyond humbled to have this great gentleman here. This man, legend in all caps, Jimmy Reyes. Sir, I can't toot your horn enough. Please, 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 run us down the many accolades if you can remember, because there's a lot you are a big
Yeah.
dog, and your
Oh,
name
thank you.
does have a lot of cachet. Please, if you don't mind, sir, to introduce yourself, because I can't
Wow.
do it enough. This is a for me. This
Oh,
is a
thank
big
you.
deal, because when I seen you in the chat, I was like, that ain't him. Because
No.
you never who's trolling,
Yeah.
and I'm just
Yeah.
like,
You're like, yeah. No. Well, you're hyping me up so much. I don't know if I can live up to it now.
hey,
Oh
no,
man,
no,
thank
man,
you.
you are the man. Yeah.
No, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'm actually, when I started in comics, I had a really humble beginning. I really didn't even know comics existed. I grew up very poor. And when I say poor, I mean, think of like poor, and then they would make fun of me. The poor would make fun of me and call me poor. Like that's how poor we were, growing
Yeah.
up. And in my neighborhood, the only people that we knew of that were artists were tattoo artists.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like that was your career. If you know how to draw, you'd be a tattoo artist. So growing up, I had no idea comics existed. I didn't even know that I could draw. And it was about when I was about 13, I got adopted by my sister
Okay.
legally. And my sister moved up to a middle class. It got me out of the ghetto. And I got to move out of the courts and the housing, and
Wow.
get away from the violence. And I got to move up to a middle class, predominantly white neighborhood where the kids would they all had at the school they had a directory where everybody would be listed, every student would be listed first and last name with their phone number.
Okay.
So it was easy. If you were want to play pranks on your friends and troll them, you could just look up the school directory, call them up, pretend to be like the police or something, and be like, your name was mentioned in an incident last night.
That is
you know
hilarious.
we could do that stuff. But it wasn't until then that I met some kids who were into comic books, and I had no direction in my life. I was about 15 years old, didn't know where I was going to go, because growing up in the ghetto, you're not taught economics, you're not taught finances, you're not taught, save for your future, build for
Right.
your future.
Yeah.
You're not taught any of that. I mean, maybe you're taught like, metrics and grams, how to weigh stuff in gram, and
Hmm.
you know, that's about that's about all the education we get there. But so I learned about comic books and got introduced to it. And a friend of mine, we were sitting down, he was drawing some of the comic pages, and he just said, "Hey, pick up, why don't you draw and try drawing?"
Hmm.
And I just said, "Okay, I'll try to draw." And I did. I just started drawing what I saw, copying pages. And Wolverine was the first comic that I had ever seen,
Okay.
at John Buscema art. I was just copying pages, and my friend said, "Oh my God, wow, you should draw comic books." And I went, "Okay." Like I had no idea, I didn't know what it took. His mother was a professional artist. She made a living, a really good living, as an artist. And so I got to meet a professional artist and get to learn what it was to be an artist.
Mhm.
And that was it. I just started drawing. I had no idea. And it only took me 6 months after that to break into comics. I
Okay.
was
It seems like you had a natural talent for it. How
Yeah,
bi- how big of a difference maker is that, though? So just say you did.
it, yeah, like scientists don't really know like why one artist can draw better than the other,
Okay.
and I think it was just I think it was a couple of things. As a child, I was born into the world with cancer, so I came into the world battling for my life,
Oh, wow.
and
Okay.
I survived cancer, and then grew up in a home with alcoholics who were very abusive emotionally. And I saw a lot of violence. And I think somehow when I found creativity, it was an escape.
Okay.
It was just a way into another world and build another world. And I think it was just my attention to detail, and somehow I was just able to mimic what I saw. And I started drawing. I had really didn't have any skill. I didn't have any like technique, but I could just do it,
Hmm.
you know? And fortunately, I mean, I was able to get work, within just 6 months of just copying what I was doing. And if it wasn't for that, I mean, honestly, I don't really know where I would ended up or where I would be, for comics.
Wow, I appreciate you sharing that. So once you found your calling, you got into it. Can you talk about the early struggles of being a comic artist, the pitfalls you went through? I mean, just run it down for us,
Yeah.
man. Give us the horror stories.
Oh man, there's so many. So I went to I put together a portfolio and I went to my first convention that was locally. It was in a hotel lobby, and it had Stan Lee was there, John Buscema was there. We had Sam De La Rosa, which was a
Okay.
local artist in my neighborhood, and he's Hispanic, and he grew up like I did. Grew up, we grew up poor, and he was in a comic, so he was kind of. I was getting to meet him and hear his story, and I was like, oh my god, I have a very similar type of story. So I was talking with Sam De La Rosa, but the first thing he said to me was, "You sure you want to get in this business?" And I said, "Yeah, dude, you're working on Venom. Like he was inking Venom #1, Lethal Protector." And I was so excited, like, "Oh my god, this is incredible!" And he's like, "This is a cutthroat industry." you know, and really think about it before you get in. And that
Mhm.
was my introduction. That was the first thing I had ever heard. And I was a young kid. I was about 17 years old going like, "Nah, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about." He's just trying to keep me away because he sees my talent, He's scared of my abilities. I keep continuing to build my portfolio within that 6 months, and before I had gotten the actual work. Well, I was also about to become a father. I was a teen who uh, was about to become a father as a teenager, and I ended up getting married at a very very young age. And so my new wife, who was also a teenager, she calls up a local company for me, and it's Antarctic Press. Calls them up, and she says, "Hey, I'd like to set up an interview for artists. You guys interview artists?" Oh, they're so excited. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Why don't you come in tomorrow? We would love, or come in today, right now. And she's like, "Well, I can't make it right now, but how about tomorrow?" And they go, "Okay." They're all excited about it. They set up the interview, and the morning comes, and my wife, who she a lot of people think she's Asian, but she's actually a Latina,
Okay.
and but she looks very 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 Asian. People think she's Chinese,
Okay.
and she's actually my ex-wife, but my first wife. And so we get up, we go to Antarctic office, and right before we go in, I get real nervous, and I go, "Whew, I'm going to stay outside for a second. Let me just catch my breath. Let me just figure out here for a second here." And she goes, "All right, I'm gonna go on in. I'm gonna go let them know you're here, and let them know we're here, and everything." So I said, "Okay." So I stand outside. I'm just kind of trying to, like, gather myself, like, "Oh man, what do I say? What do I do? Like, this is my first job interview I've ever had. I want this to be a career," and I was nervous. So I guess I took a lot longer than I expected, than I should have, or that I realized.
Mhm.
I go into Antarctic Press, into their lobby. There is my ex-wife, who was a teenager at the time, and she's only like 5 feet tall, and she's really really a very attractive woman, and she's sitting there with about 15 guys all around her, the entire studio all around her, my portfolio spread out on her lap. They're all looking at pages, and I hear them going, "Oh my god, wow, this is amazing. I love this. Wow, this is great," and just raving about the artwork. And I'm standing behind everybody feeling a little better, smiling.
Yeah.
One of the guys noticed me, and he looks up at me, and he doesn't pay any attention to me, and he goes back down, and they just keep talking to her, and they're all raving about the artwork. So I stand there for like 15 minutes just watching them go crazy over the artwork. And then I go, "Thank you." And they look up at me like, "Why are you taking the credit for her work?" You know?
Wow.
They assumed she was the
She did.
artist and she was there because she's the one that called and walked in with the portfolio.
Yeah.
So no joke, and I'm not exaggerating, when she says, "Oh yeah, thank you. My husband is the artist," they all went, "Ah," and they all walk back to their chairs.
What?
Ben Dunn, the publisher, comes down the hallway, and he calls me to the back, and he says, come on, come with me. Let's take a look at your stuff."
Yeah.
So she says, "I'm gonna sit in the lobby right here, and I'm gonna wait right here, and I'll wait for you." And I said, "All right, great, great." She says, "Good luck." And I go down this hallway. I go all the way to Ben Dunn's office. At the time, he was creating this new book called Warrior Nun. It was actually called Warrior Nun, Ariella. and it's now a Netflix TV show. But at the time, he was just creating it. So when I walk in, I had no idea who he was. On his coffee table in his office, he had a huge, huge office and a coffee table. And there's magazines of BDSM or whatever, like when they put the ball gag in your mouth, leather whips. There's a catalog, a bunch of catalogs all over this coffee table. No, no joke. And I walk in like, what do you guys publish? Like, I'm thinking, what do they? I thought they do comic books, So Ben goes over my work. He gives me critiques, and then he says to me, "Hey, how about you draw a cover for me?" He goes, "Do you know the Guyver?" And I go, "Yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah. I love that favorite character." And he
Yeah.
goes, and I'm just BSing, dude. Like I have no idea. I didn't even really know comics at the time. And so I just go, "Yeah, yeah." And he goes, "All right, cool." He gives me smart boards and he says, "Here, I noticed you're drawing on paper and construction boards and stuff like that, whatever I
Mhm.
could find, because I was a teenager, I didn't have any money." And so he gives me the right art boards and he sends me off. And I'm walking back down the hallway, get back to the lobby, 12 guys again, almost everybody in the studio, all around my ex-wife, just talking with her, and they're all excited, talking manga, showing their artwork, and they're all trying to show off to her and get a girl's praise because she was so sweet, like, "Oh wow, this is great." She was so nice. They loved it. They're like, "Oh," because in the 90s there were no women in comics.
Right.
She was probably the first female ever in that
Okay.
office. So they were all excited, and I wait for a second, and she goes, "Is it you done?" I said, "Yeah, I got a project. I was really excited." And so we get my portfolio and we walk out out of the building. There was like a little walkway. It was on the second floor, on the second story. So you had to walk across this like little kind of like bridge. So I'm walking across this little bridge, and I lean over to my ex wife and I said, "They want me to draw something called the Giver." And she goes, "Do you know what that is?" And I said, "No, but I got to find out." And this guy behind me, he laughs, and I hear the flicker of his lighter, and he gets his cigarette and he goes, he goes, "Yeah, there's a comic store. Go down this road right here. Next light, take a right, and you go in there, and they'll get you that." And I go, "Thank you, man. All right." So we're poor. We go down the road, my old little beat up car that we had as a teenager, and we go to this comic store, my wife and I. We walk in right away. She just says, "Woo, that's earthy. Woo, that's a smell." And it did. Comic stores in the 90s, man.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was a bunch
yeah.
of smell like onions. It's like, woo, and paper, new paper and onion. And she makes the comment right away, real loud. And they notice us, because there's a girl walking in. No girls in comic stores in the 90s, especially a real pretty little petite thing that looks,
Breaking down barriers. Yeah.
yeah, first of our kind. And so we go there, and I asked the kids behind the counter, I said, "Hey, I'm looking for a comic book. The Gaver?" And they go, "What?" And I go, the, the Geisher? And then they go, they laugh like so ridiculous and nerdy. One guy was super heavy, and the other guy was real skinny, petite guy that I never forgot. I call them kids, but I was a kid too at the same
Yeah.
time. But I'm old now, so I remember them how they were. They look at each other. They laugh so hard. They call over another nerd from the back and, "Come over here. Come over here. What are you looking for? What are you looking for?" And I go, "Was that not right? The Gager?" And they laughed at me so hard. And I look at my wife like, "Eh, am I in the Twilight Zone? Like these nerds are making fun of me. Like that's crazy. Like I've never been in this situation." It's flipped. And they laugh so hard and they go, "It's Bio Booster Guyver." And I go, "That comic. I want that." And they go, "It's a manga." And I went, "Do you have it or not?
I
What the
can
hell is
see this.
going on?"
I literally can see this as like the opening scene of a. I can see this.
But they made my first experience, ever in that store so memorable, and I didn't know how I felt about it, like,
Yeah.
after I walked out. So, they go and they get me they go over and they walk over and there's a couple of, mangas, and I didn't know what mangas were, and I
Yeah.
and I I go over, they show me a manga, and they go, "Here you go. This will get you started, and it'll introduce you to the Buy a Booster Guyver." I said, "Awesome, great." I looked at it; it was 12.99, and I look, in 1990, and I look over at my ex wife, and I go, "It's 12." you know, and she goes, Get it. It's for your work." And I'm like, "Oh my god, how are we gonna afford this?" So we put it on credit. I go home, I draw the Guyver, and I go through the whole thing, the reference, draw a cover, my first work, Guyver, and I turned it in, and they loved it. They thought my work was great, and they offered me more work. But here's the thing: I got paid $50 for my first work, and I had to spend $13.
For the
Yeah.
economics. There you go.
But I got my foot in the door
Yeah.
6 months after discovering I could draw, and, I had that was, like, some of the craziest experiences, but some of the horror stuff that happened to me was that, because, the fact that I could draw, like, the more popular Western styles, I could draw like Jim Lee, I could really
Okay.
mimic the Mark Silvestri style. I wasn't as good as they were because, I mean, they had years of experience and they built technique, but I could make it look and fake it,
Okay.
like, I could make it look like their work. So I think that created, because our comic artists were very competitive, and I think that created some type of, it changed the environment in the studio because they started to give me less work. They started less people there would talk to me. They wouldn't acknowledge me. I'd walk in with my work, and they would just kind of ignore me. And sometimes I'd have to stand there and go, "Hey, Ben, how are you?" And when I went in to go get paid, to collect a check, you have to turn in your voucher,
Hmm.
and they would give you a check. Ben wrote me a check, and he put on the check Jimmy Chin, Chin, making fun of my jaw because I have a very Roman jaw.
Okay.
And they all laughed. And I said, "Hey, you wrote Jimmy Chin?" And he goes, "What did I write? What did I write?" And he laughed, and the whole studio came together. Wait, wait. And one guy's like laughing. "Oh, no, Ben, you're the worst. I can't believe you did that, man. You really did it. You really did it." And that's when I realized, oh, dude, this was like they're picking on me.
Okay.
Like, what the hell's going on? And then after that, he refused to give me any work. Gave me that last check. I walked out. And after that, he was like, "Nah, I'm never gonna hire this guy again." Not because I was ever late, not because I didn't turn in work, but just because of the fact that I could do work and get attention, you know?
That's odd.
Yeah. Yeah, and then, one of the guys, when I would come in the studio, one of the guys or the editor, he looked at me and he said, "Hey, look, man, I don't wanna waste your time anymore. Ben just doesn't like you." And I said, "I don't get it. What happened, man?" And he goes, "Well, one of the guys walked in here and said that, hey, that you because I started talking to guys at Image Comics.
Okay.
I became friends with some of the guys at Image, and he says, "Hey, now that why don't you go over to Image now that you think you're bigger than Antarctic or whatever?" And I said, "When did I ever say that? How did you guys even know that I was even talking to the guys
Right.
at Antarctic? I mean, at Image, there was only one guy that knew. He was hanging out with me when I was talking to the Image guys." So I was like, "Oh, that's the guy you're talking about." The dude
Mm.
went in, sabotaged me in the studio, and caused me work. Yeah, it was crazy. I was a teenager, I was young, I needed the work, and this other guy who was a bit older than me, he didn't care. I was about to have a kid too. I
Yeah.
mean, my son was about to be born, and I needed the work bad, and they didn't care. That's how petty that it was, at the time, and, it hasn't gotten any better. It's still very petty. There's
Okay.
still a
I was
lot
going
of
to
petty
ask you, is
people.
the industry still that? I mean, it's bringing back memories of the music business for me. So I'm like, what? Y'all do it over there too? So the culture is
Yeah.
still that.
It is. It's still very much that. Anytime it's competitive, when there are much more talent wanting to break in and less spots available,
Okay.
well, people will turn into mean girls. They're like little high school girls,
Yeah.
and they start doing all this crazy stuff. Where I mean, where I grew up in the ghetto, where my father was a truck driver, my father was a boxer, my brothers, and I was raised by an alpha male with a bunch of brothers.
Hmm.
And, if you had a problem with somebody, you go say it to their face, and we
Right.
settle it with our fists.
Right.
That's how I grew up. And so this new world, of Mean Girl petty stuff was so alien to me. I didn't know how to combat it. I didn't know what it was, because my father would always say to me whenever I would get in an argument with my brothers, he'd go, this is going to sound misogynist, but this is my father saying this. He goes, "Hey, hey, hey, whoa, whoa, we're not women. You don't go around bickering.
Right, right.
Take this outside."
Okay,
You know
okay.
what I mean? Like
Yeah.
that's how my dad raised us. That's how he raised the boys.
So then, if you don't mind, so what happened after? Did you get it with Image, or did it, or what would? So what was your next move for you after?
Well, I was fortunate enough to live next door to Salim Crawford, and he was inking for Image Comics at the
Okay.
time. So I was penciling and inking my own work, mostly just doing like little covers and stuff like that. And Salim saw me and he said, "Hey, you're actually pretty good with ink, and you're actually, I think, better with ink than you are with penciling." He's like, "Would you be interested in, picking up some ink work?" And he taught me how to use a crow quill. And if it wasn't for Salim Crawford taking the time, I mean, this guy was already working big in the industry. He was working on Heroes Reborn. He was helping Jim Lee when they were doing the Heroes Reborn. He was inking Iron Man. I think he was inking Ryan Benjamin, and Ryan Benjamin and Salim Crawford. They're both black artists, and neither of them at the time there weren't that many,
Mhm.
black artists working in the industry. And I think he was I think he was I was really able to just like relate with them because I think we were like minorities in there, and I think that was why we kind of gravitated. Or I don't know, maybe he's just a nice guy, but he really, took the time and he taught me how to ink. And if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't have had a career
Mhm.
in comics, really. So he taught me how to ink. He let me ghost ink on a couple of stuff. I started helping on the 10th, which was for an artist named Tony Daniel, who ended up working at DC on Batman. And from that, I ended up getting work with independents, a
Okay.
bunch of independents. I started inking Ghostbusters. I
Oh,
started
a
inking
Ghostbusters Legion, right?
Ghostbusters Legion.
Okay. Yeah.
I got to work on Starship Troopers. I got to work on a book with Kevin Grievous. He and I did a book together, but I was the inker on it called Zombies of Mass Destruction.
Okay.
And that's when I got to meet him. And I finally ran into him at a convention. And I walk up. He was walking through the convention. He wasn't at his table. He was just walking across the convention. And I literally, because I'm like 5'1", I'm tiny. I'm a little dude. I walk by, and if you've ever met Kevin up close, like in person, like I walk by and I just like that dude. That's Kevin. And and I yell over Kevin, and he looks back at me. And he goes, "Yeah." And I go, "Hey man, we worked on a book together." "Oh, hold on right there. Hold on right there. Hold on. I'll come right back." His voice. I can't even do it, man. Like, "I'll be right back. I'll be right back." And I go, "All right, man. All right, I'll be right here, man." So I'm holding the book that we worked on together, and he was super cool. He took a picture with me, and he signed it for me and everything like that. And he's like, "Good work, good work." The guy, "That's good work, good work." I thought I like it, the way Kevin talks, and he was just such a cool dude, man. And since then, I've gotten to meet him again, and we hung out over on Aaron Lopresti's channel,
Okay.
and he was doing his new book he was promoting, and I was talking with him, and he still remembered me and everything. So
It,
super super
it,
cool dude.
this sounds like the streak of good luck you had in your early beginnings. I'm still waiting for like the horror. Like I was like, it just seems like everything just worked out in your favor. Has that always been the case for you? And should newer artists expect to get bent over? Is it still that culture like you're gonna get jerked at some point?
I think it's the people that you first meet, because like I was saying, there were some there was a group that was very petty, and I met them first, and they were extremely petty, and it was a bad experience, and I could have just said, left a bitter taste in my mouth. I don't want this anymore. These guys are not professional, at all, or even
Right.
just they're just not good people,
Yeah.
and I just saw I could have left, but I met Salim Crawford, and he took the time. He was just somebody who was nice. And I mean, there's good people and there's bad people. It's just like throughout this world. I mean, wherever you go, I mean, you're going to meet some people that are really really good and sincere,
Hmm.
and you're going to make friends, and then they're going to have these people that are just going to seem to just hate you for, I don't, whatever reasons they have.
Okay.
And that's the comic book industry, you know, where I've been very fortunate though. I mean, I've had a lot of really nice people take me under the wing, help me out. David Finch, he's huge in the industry. He's really big. Dave Finch took me from independent and he brought me into the mainstream. And because of him, I got exposure, and I got to work on Marvel's Avengers. I got to ink bigger projects with him. I got to ink. We got to do this Batman thing, and we got to. I got to ink Power Rangers with him. Work on that, and that was incredible, man. Power Rangers, and tons of other stuff. With Dave, and then Ethan Van Sciver was nice enough. He brought me on his platform and introduced me to his audience, and
Okay.
and so there have been really good people that have helped me out along the way. That I mean, so many people that I've been very very fortunate to meet. And so now in the industry, I've learned to distinguish between those that claim that they want to that they're just being brutally honest about your work, but they're
Right.
more interested in being brutal
Okay.
than honest. So I've learned to differentiate the two, but still, they've also helped me. Those that were like really critical of my work and just trying to beat me down,
Hmm.
they also help thicken my skin and help me actually learn to accept criticism. Even though some of them were just being harsh and mean and brutal, but there was still some truth in there.
Hmm.
And I would go, these guys would try to point out my weaknesses to make me feel weak
Okay.
and make me want to quit. But what I learned through my father in boxing is that they point out your weaknesses. If you're not aware of your weakness, you can't
You
strengthen
can't
them.
strength. Right. Right.
So when they made me aware of my weaknesses, they just made me a better artist. They made me a stronger artist.
So you're working. You're getting a lot of publications. Getting a lot of. What was the moment you said, I could do this? Like I can craft my own stories and my own characters. Like what was the moment you said I can do this?
Well, it was my first introduction into comics was, like I said, with Ben Dunn, who was a guy who actually him and his brother, they were when they were in college, they had a school project they had to do. So he decided he was going to turn in his school project and in comic book form.
Hmm.
So their father financed it for them. Their father was a doctor. They were very fortunate. Their father paid 2 grand, which in the 80s when he started, 2 grand's a lot of money.
Hmm.
But they had dad right there to just bam,
Yeah.
give them the money. And so he started up his own company and he stayed independent. And that was my first introduction. And then I started to really admire the guys at Image and always wanting to get into Image and idolizing those guys where they owned their own IPs. They were the one that were owning their own businesses. So I was really introduced right away to entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
But I really didn't really think I could do it myself until 2020.
Okay.
I think I worked as a freelancer because I didn't really think that I could ever do it, only because of the logistics back then. We didn't have crowdfunding
Hmm.
where you had to find investors and it cost so much money, and you would go through a distributor who would take 60% of the
Wow.
cut, 60%.
Holy
I
cow.
mean, yeah, it's like gangster, you know what I mean? Like they're like coming in and being like, "Oh, no, you're giving me more than half of your profit."
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Damn, what are you, mobsters, or what is this?"
Yeah.
And so it was much harder back then. It wasn't possible. But in 2020, when they did the pencils down thing, and the other thing that happened to me too was when I was working with Dave Finch, inking Dave Finch. He leaves the main two. They want him back, and they see that he's friends with me. They see he really likes me. He works with me almost exclusively as the inker. So they start promising me things. They start telling me, "Hey, this is one of the big two, telling me, hey, let's get you introduced to our editors. Hey, let's get you some work. Let's get you on this book. Let's get this rolling. Let's get this going." And
Hmm.
then very quickly into the conversation with them, do you think Dave would want to join us?
Ah, there
Superheroes
it is.
miss David.
Okay.
You know, you, and I said, I don't know. I'll ask him. So I just mentioned to Dave what they were saying. He's like, "Nah, I'm not. I'm not. I'm working on a book right now. He's like, I'm not going back to monthlies and all this stuff." So he emails them. He's David Finch. He could tell them, like, nah, I'm I'm not coming back to comics right now. I'm
Yeah.
not doing superhero stuff right now. And so the second he did that, he upsets them. They ghosted me. They just completely stopped all communication with me. They took it out on me. They took every offer they put on the table. They took it off the table.
Damn.
And this was right before Pencils Down. And then Pencils Down happened, and we go into, the whole quarantine, pandemic and everything. And that's when I started to search around for work, and I found crowdfunding.
Okay. That is okay. Has anyone from your past come back to apologize for how they treated you?
No, no. In fact, I ran into Ben Dunn at a convention, and in 2022 or 2021, just a couple of years ago,
Yeah.
he's sitting at the table, and my new wife. The joke is, and the people that know me, I've been married a lot, a lot. I've been married a lot of times, and my current wife now is half my age, so they tease me. They're like, I got a young Dominican wife,
Okay. Okay. All right.
and
Right.
she's Dominican and Cuban, and she's beautiful, and she's half my age, and a lot of people are like, hey, but they also tease me about it too. And she and I were standing. I was attending the convention as a professional, and we walked by. We're standing by this table, and I look over and I notice it's Ben. And I looked at him. I said, "Hey, man, how have you been? How you doing?" He goes, "Hey, all right." And but he didn't look up at me. I mean, I looked up right now at the camera, but he didn't look up at me. He stayed his head down. He was drawing on paper. Nobody was at his booth, and I just go, "Hey," trying to small talk with him. He ignored me. So
Yeah.
I just said, "Hey, all right." I walked away. I just thought, "Hey, I'd give it a try. I'd be the bigger man," like,
Wow.
and but he was still holding some kind of grudge or something for almost 30 years later, and I just go, but crowdfunding's been amazing. And I really am happy where I'm at now,
Okay.
you know.
Here's what bothered. Here's why I'm worried for crowdfunding, or at least the optics of it. Now, I know as of right now, 3 different content creators that have crowdfunding for their own comics. Right?
Yeah.
They're taking money now, and they're just now showing the ink work, right? They're like, hey, here's some sketches and here's some ink work. We're doing the ink, we're doing the colors, right? But keep donating to the project. Is that the right way to do it?
Crowdfunding is the right way. I think we've had some people. I know we've had some people out there, and trying to say that you should that you should invest in everything yourself and
Okay.
do it all yourself, and then then go out and look for pre-orders. But that's not crowdfunding. That's not crowdfunding at all, because what we're doing is we're trying to raise the capital. We need contributors, people that will contribute to raise the capital to start up our companies.
But
That's why it's
is that?
called.
I'm sorry to cut you, but is that
Yeah.
to finish the project or to start the project, or how much should the artist be like? Okay, I'm 30-40% in. I need your help to help me finish the 60%, because I'm looking at, once again, I'm casual observer, and
Yeah.
normally if when I donate to a finished product, or if you maybe 80-90% done. I'm not gonna give when you're 30-40%, not even halfway into it. Like, now I'm feeling like you playing with me, because am I seeing it wrong, or you know?
Well, this is the thing. Artists we have to eat as well.
Yeah.
Artists have to support ourselves. And so what you're doing is you're also, when you're making a contribution to a creator's project, you're not only helping them fund that project, but you're also helping support them during that time.
Okay.
So it would be as if you were to ask somebody going, like, hey, um, build me this house, but I'll pay you after the house, when the house is completed. but how is that builder going to support his family along the way and things like that, especially if he's an independent contractor, where we're totally independent. We're totally relying on backers. We have there's no investors, there's no advertisers, anything like that. Where it's just solely relying upon the backers.
Okay.
And so the artist, as you're helping support them along the way throughout that project, the benefit is that it allows us to really just create something great, something above and beyond where the mainstream is lacking and
Mm,
failing. I think, crowdfunding right now is the way. It's the way to do things. I believe it's what's gonna save the comic book industry right now and keep it alive, because you have Marvel out there, and they have a lot of agendas, ideology out there, and they're no longer focused on building heroes. All they want to do is just push their agenda. They're not involved in character anymore. They don't even care about the craft, the art anymore. It's just about the message.
okay.
But when you're coming to crowdfunders like this, we got veterans in here like Ethan Van Sciver, we've got Aaron Lopresti, we've got just tons of these guys that come together that are known as Comicsgate Kings. And these are all veterans, and I get to be part of this group, And these are the guys that not only have we worked in the industry, we have a passion, we love comics. Our comics are what we would call, like, remember in the clothing industry, it was FUBU,
Yeah.
for us, by us.
Bias. Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Our comics are for fans by the fans. That's us, for us by us. We love comics. Where today you have YouTubers now and YouTubers have always sold merch, right? It's always been a novelty. They got product, they got merch. They are now looking at comic books as another merch. It's just another product.
Right.
They
Okay.
honestly, most of them, it's a vanity project. They really don't really have a passion or really understand how to tell a story. Most of their stories, most of their comics are lacking story. Most of their characters are bland. You know, they don't know how to build up a hero, where a hero should face adversity. A hero should overcome things and grow as you tell the story. You know, where the Comicsgate Kings and people that have had all this experience in the comic book industry understand this. They understand the craft. You know what I mean? You know that
Mhm.
old saying, like, just because you can box doesn't mean you can get in the ring with Ali.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's not like, oh, I know how to rap. You know what? I can get in there. I can be better than Eminem, better than 50 Cent. I'm better than Dre and you know what I mean? And it's
Yeah.
like, and then when you get in there, you realize, oh shoot, like, and I think we're starting to see that now with a lot of these YouTubers who are doing their vanity projects. They're starting to realize, like,
Is that what that
uh,
is? Vanity projects? Is that when you hear them? When you hear that, and like I'm launching a comic. Is that your first thought? Vanity project?
well, I this is what like with Eric July, he had Rippaverse, right? He has Rippaverse, and he started out by going, oh, mainstream's woke, I we don't like their ideologies, and I don't like their politics all their message being pushed on me, and I'm creating an anti woke comic, back my anti woke comic, and $3.7 million was raised. So many people came in, backed that comic book, right? Put it up on their shelf, didn't even read it. That's their trophy. We took down Marvel. We took down DC right there with that book. But he's not gonna save the industry. He's not gonna beat Marvel or DC with characters that are bland, with a comic book that has no story.
Okay.
That's
Let me pause it right there.
Yeah.
What is your approach to your storytelling? How did you learn? What tips and tricks? Um, what like you said, what makes it a good story for the hero? Um,
Yeah.
why have others not? I mean, it's just like basic storytelling. You go to film school, they all tell you this is the format. Now, how you tweak it is up to you, but this is the basic story format, three arcs, blah blah blah. Why does others not follow the same?
Well, I think, like, if you like when we look at the comic book industry, we see that, like, sales for manga are going up. They're going really high. And we see that comic sales are declining, especially with Marvel and DC. The stories are declining, but what is happening with Marvel and DC is that they're no longer telling stories about heroes. They're more involved in like feminist agendas where they take a female character and they make her perfect. She's got no flaws. She's perfect. Where a character should face adversity, a character should face challenges and has some failure and some growth, and we see the character as they evolve. The
Hmm.
hero's journey, where a lot of Marvel DC just tries to come in right away and just say, no, this is the female character and she's stronger than Superman. Superman comes to her for advice. He looks up to her, and that's not a story, you know. That's I mean, that's just boring. And
Okay, is that part of that a bad story versus part of the market not wanting a strong female character? How much of that is part of it?
no, we've had tons of female
Okay,
characters that are really really strong, and have been told really well where it wasn't the message being told first.
okay.
Stan Lee put messages in, and Jack Kirby put messages within their books. They had things that were relative to what was going on at the time in the '60s,
Hmm.
that were going on in society, but the message never came before the characters,
Okay,
the story. The message was just part of it in the background, where today it's just all about the message and they don't worry about developing character,
okay,
character first and good stories. This is why manga is doing so well, is because manga is all about building. They still know how to build heroes. They still know how to, build characters and tell good stories. So it's not about, is manga, sure, manga's got, 100 pages and it costs half as much as a comic today that costs, comic that has 22 pages today.
hmm,
Sure, that's part of it, but
hmm,
that's not the whole thing. And then I think the other thing right now that is lacking in the comic industry right now, not only that, about what the stories, is that diversity in genre and
okay,
diversity in subject matter. Comics is primarily dominated by superheroes, and so this is why when I came to Comicsgate, I looked from the outside. I looked at it and said, when I come into crowdfunding, I don't want to do my version of Superman. I don't want to do my version of the X-Men. That's already been done.
okay.
That's not what this industry needs. I believe in this movement that I was introduced to, and by Ethan, and got to meet all the other Comicsgate kings, and I got to be part of this movement with them. I believe in it, and I believe that if I'm going to be part of it and I'm going to be here to actually contribute something that the comic book industry really needs, I need to bring in something and fill a hole, a gap that
Okay.
was, especially in Comicsgate, which was at the time fantasy. There were no other fantasy books when I came in. There was no, at the time, there was no Rini. She had Fiendish. Andy Smith wasn't doing his core draft at the time.
Hmm.
So I said, I'm gonna come in. I'm gonna do something different, fantasy. And it took a lot of work, and it was a really slow start, man. To get people to look at something other than superhero, you
Okay.
know.
Well, you say I'm hearing you. When I grew up with fantasy, Dungeons and Dragons, and all. I mean, that was my introduction to anything before necessarily comics. Um, is that a generational thing with the fantasy? Maybe it's taken a while to gravitate, or it's been so long since we had good fantasy to compete with the superheroes per se.
Yeah, I think fantasy, mainly what we have, like you said, D&D. A lot of it. I mean, fantasy is the biggest genre. It's
Okay.
bigger than superhero.
Okay.
You know, it's it's huge, and it's predominantly it's the biggest genre throughout all platforms. Movies, novels, just about anything, TV shows, everything. I mean, fantasy is the big genre, but for some reason it just hadn't taken off yet in comic books. And I think because like with D&D, it wasn't really a comic book. We
It was
did have a
a
Saturday
game, right? A
morning,
board game
this-
more than,
a
and
board
then
game,
they had
Saturday
the
morning
cartoon, and I
cartoon.
was like, we're there. So yeah.
Yeah, but there still is a very, very large audience out there for fantasy, and there are a lot of comic collectors out there and people that are into comics that, you know, love fantasy. So, and but they're so used to and bred to really just go for the superhero that I decided that when I created my fantasy book, Dragon Rage, I had to create it in a way with a flair of superhero,
Okay.
but not stray too far from fantasy because I do want those core hardcore fantasy fans that grew up with D&D
Hmm.
to really, go, okay, this is really good. This is true fantasy here.
Hmm.
But I want those that are so used to the superhero to when they come in, they go, oh, this still kind of feels superhero. I
Okay.
think I could get into this.
This may be an off question. Wouldn't DC and Marvel kind of would be smart to kind of take a page from manga and see what they're doing and kind of implement some of that into how they do their processes? Or are they're just so big at this point, it doesn't matter what they do because they're still going to have enough support to keep the lights on, to keep the machine going?
Yeah, I mean they're a huge company. I mean they're owned by Discovery, owns Warner Brothers, who
Mm-hmm.
owns DC Comics. They're a conglomerate, at this point. So for them, I think what's happening is that they are looking at it as a product. They're no longer really focused on fans anymore. When you call something creative and something that fans love and really care about, and you call it a product, that just removes everything. That just
Perfect
shows
segue.
us,
Let's get into it.
you're there. That just shows you're about the dollar. It's
Okay.
it's corporate at that point. And I think that's all that Marvel DC care about. Is the keeping the stockholders happy.
How do you feel about the state of independent comic creators or independent creators as of right now? Because of social media, the internet is wide open. There's really no more barriers of entry so much per se. How do you feel about the state of independence? Are you optimistic, or you're like, I don't know?
Well, what I love is that what the internet has done in platforms. I don't want it to sound like I'm completely against YouTubers creating comic books. I think it is amazing that they're using their platform because like with Eric July, and he did Ripperverse. He brought in people that never read a comic. And that's amazing. I that is something that I think it was really great, and I commend him for that.
Okay.
Obviously, his backers are not reading the comic book because if they were, they'd have a lot of questions, a lot of concerns, with the story. And I think it's great that they're using their platform. They're getting them out there. But what I think they really, really should do is that they should really get somebody in there who is really truly passionate about comics. Bring in some of these comic pros, and listen to people in the comic book industry
Mhm.
that have been working in the comic book industry for many years. You could learn a whole lot and be open to that. Is where I think. Um, but there are going to be those out there that are going to look at it as merch, and the audience calls them grifters, but I think to a lot of them, they're just going to be like Marvel DC. They're just going to call it a product, and to them, it's just about money and numbers.
Okay. So have the Eric Julys become everything they used to rail against? Have they become the gatekeepers or the new gatekeepers per se?
Um, wait, ask that again.
Okay, so have the Eric Julys of the independent sector, have they become the very people? Have they become the new Marvel and DCs that they used to rally against? Like we were all united under one common cause. Like it's us against them. And now it's like, oh, I think you got a taste of success, and now you're starting to sound and operate like them. Uh,
Yeah,
have you seen? Is that what it looks like to you?
that is such a great question. And it does so much to me because I remember where Eric July built his platform just, and I'm not, I mean, I don't have anything personal against Eric July. I don't want it to sound like that. I'm using him as an example quite a bit here, but because he's the most well known, that when I say Eric July, people are going to know who I'm talking about. But I don't have anything up against Eric personally by himself, and I hope he's successful. To be honest, even though I mean there are things I'm disappointed in that he's doing. There are things that I don't agree with. And one of it is that I remember he was constantly tearing down DC Comics for subpar comics. Marvel for why are you putting out comics without, without story and subpar, and it's just, and then he puts out the same comic, even lower quality than the comics he was upset about. And when he would go, why is Marvel DC not listening? They're not listening to the fans. They're not respecting the fans. He's not listening to any of his fans. He's even blocking people that have backed his book. And I go, oh my God, wow, that's that I can't think of a more disrespect to your fan.
Yeah.
To go, you bought my book. Whoa, you're questioning my talent, my skill. It's 3.7. I'm leader of a multi-million-dollar company. You're not going to be for much longer, man, if you're not respecting the fans. You should always just say this, like Rob Liefeld. He has a podcast.
Yes.
On his podcast, he said, I love feedback. I want to hear what you like and dislike. Give me feedback. So on Twitter, I wrote to Rob. I said, hey, Rob, I love your podcast. I listen to it every day. You go down a lot of rabbit holes. Man, maybe if we avoid some of those rabbit holes and get to the point a little more, I think that maybe that would help. That's my feedback.
Blocked.
He said to me, he said, simple solution, don't listen. And I wrote back to him. I said, Rob, you would rather lose a listener than to simply have just said, thank you for your feedback, whether you agree with it or not.
It's funny you mentioned him because I used to follow him on Twitter a couple years ago, and sometimes when they give him pushback, he didn't like that at all.
Yeah,
I remember they were working on the first Deadpool movie, and they were just running to him for questions and thoughts and ideas, and he just got so irritated. And I was just like, wow, okay, yeah, maybe the business has kind of got to him to a point to where it's no longer fun for him.
yeah.
Has that ever happened to you?
No. In fact, I mean, I've always worked in comics mostly like part-time because I was young and had a family. I have a family, but my kids are adults. I'm a grandpa, And
Congrats.
thanks. Yeah, my grandbabies are almost teenagers.
Oh,
I mean,
no.
that's how old I
What?
am.
Oh, gosh.
And yeah, I've almost. Well, I got one that's almost a teenager. I'm like, oh my God, where'd time go? But so I always needed 401k. I always needed benefits. So I always worked in comics, part time. So I never, I was never involved in it so much that, where I would get so stressed where I had the benefit of going, well, right now it's a little stressful, or if it's a little dry, it doesn't matter because my primary income came from my web developing.
Okay.
I was a web developer. And so I didn't have to have that stress and worry. But I've always loved comic books. I love comics. I love to be around others who love comics. You'll find me in the chat. That's why I joined watched your stream. I just love being around people who love this medium. And it blows my mind when people that don't respect their fans and they're blocking them on social media. I'm like, that's the most important. They're the reasons we're here. And if it isn't for the fans, what would I be doing?
Right.
I would be drawing paper, comics on paper, and then just putting it in a drawer,
Mhm.
And these are people that appreciate your work, and whether they like you ever been on a TV show and you got a character on a TV show, like you watch a reality show or something, and you go, you just love to hate that character.
Yes.
Like, I can't stand that girl.
Yeah,
That dude
yeah.
is such a, but you keep watching, you know what I mean? And so you're going to have those type of fans. They're going to come in and go, I hate when you did this, the way you wrote this part of this character. But they keep coming back. So, but there's some kind of emotion. So your comic should create some type of emotional reaction out of fans.
Mhm.
If you get that, that's amazing. If they keep coming back. Of course, I mean, though you want them mostly, happy and satisfied.
Okay. I'll be the first to admit I'm woefully ignorant. I'm a casual observer. I come into you guys' space sphere sector, and I see a lot of fractured groups. I see a lot of division. Now, maybe it's because I don't know the ins and outs and who's all what, but I see like maybe I can name you 5 or 6 different factions.
Yeah.
And I get it under the one banner, but it's the fandom is like they're forcing the fandom to pick and choose. Maybe I'm seeing it wrong, and I'm asking you because the Ethan versus Eric schism, right? And then there's schisms under those schisms, and then there's more schisms under those, and it's like, wow, it's like, ooh, you know, whose flag are you gonna fly today, this week, this month? Is it is this just a natural thing when it comes to um, discussions, when it comes to the state of comics, agendas, ideologies, egos per se? How does that all look to you? And is that a healthy thing to a certain extent to have these fractured divisions of you guys' space?
Yeah, it's crazy because we all share a love for comics. We're all actually we are still united under that, under certain things, for comics. But I think it's society, the way society works.
Okay.
Is I think that everyone, as human beings, we all want to belong to a group. We all want to become part of something. We all need a purpose, and I think what happens is we all seem to gravitate to those that share the same point of view that we have. Where liberals, the whole definition of liberal is somebody that is open to new ideas. And yet, liberals, in my opinion, seem to be the most closed to any open idea. And so we tend to gravitate to around those people. I'm not calling people everybody liberals, but I'm just saying a lot of us, we tend to want to gravitate to those people that share the same type of ideas that we do
Okay.
and beliefs. And so I think that's what's happening, that we're, people are separating and wanting to become part of something, part of a
Mm-hmm.
group,
Mm-hmm.
and becoming divided that way. As far, are you asking if it's like a danger or if it's?
Yeah, is it going down a path that maybe you don't want it to go down, and it just creates this fracture, just like these are the lines we're drawing in the sand, and damn you if you cross these lines, and this is it.
Yeah.
It's like almost a failure to kind of see each other's point of views. But once again, I'm coming in hella late. I'm woefully ignorant. I spent the last 3 to 4 months trying to catch up on everybody and everything. And it's like, wow, so many different ideas floating around of how they think it should go. And I'm like, okay, if you're all together under one common banner, one common cause, should that be the end goal? Like you said, the product, or not the product, but the story, the characters, should that be the most important thing above anything else?
I think the fans are number one,
Okay.
and then I think what's second, it should be the characters.
Okay.
Definitely. That is definitely, as a creator, fans are the most important thing to me. I think to fans, the most important thing is the characters and the story, but having some division in within the whole movement, in a way, it could be good
Okay.
because having a little bit of competition going on, between like when you said Ethan and Eric, having a bit of a division there, that creates competition, and competition is what's going to keep people are going to it's going to make everybody want to create the better stories, the more interesting characters, and that could help elevate. It could do
Okay.
that.
Okay.
It could also help it implode. We could also, become a civil war, and civil wars, can help, and I mean, can destroy, you know, um, civilizations and things, and in a way, that's not exactly, the best thing. So, I mean, there, it just depends on how you're looking at it,
Okay.
you know.
Um,
Um,
yes, I'm sorry. Everybody, please go sub. The links pinned to the very top for Jimmy Reyes. His projects, his crowdfunding. Please support. Please support. Um, Let me ask you. Oh wait, just had a brain fart. Wow, this getting old thing is so not cool. It really okay. Is
yeah.
manga the way?
I think there are things from manga that we can learn. In Japan, a manga artist is a mangaka out there, and mangas and are when a mangaka creates a manga, they are the sole creator. There, a lot of times, the entire series, the entire run, will be written by that one creator.
Right.
And I'm not saying, what I'm saying is there are things we can learn, and these are some of the things I think we should take from manga.
Mhm.
Whereas we have different story arcs. and we have different multiverse. We have different versions, and if we're going to introduce to new readers to these characters, where do they start? Where do they jump on? Where, like, if you were to go in and say you wanted to start picking up a manga, you go in and you find Berserk, you find Dragon Ball Z, or anything, wherever you want to start, Chainsaw Man, anything that's out there that's popular, you want to get in, you can easily start from number one. And the character, it's the same character going through. It's the same creative team, the same writer. When you come into comic books, it's so overwhelming. It's such a big, long history, and where do we start? Where do we go? And so for me, what I think uh, is really good for new readers, and I think this is why they're not going to Marvel DC, is it's so much easier for them to start with independence. And like Mark Millar has Millar World, and he's got some really great books. One of them that he's got, and I'm not trying to shill for Mark Millar, but he's got things that are like this one. It was called The Magic Order,
Okay.
and it's issue number one. And you could start right away with new characters, and you don't have to worry about 30-40 years of history. And really, to be honest, you could easily do that with Spider-Man. You don't really need all the history and everything of Spider-Man in order to really get in and understand who Spider-Man is.
Right.
Unfortunately, Marvel's not taking advantage of that. Marvel's just rebooting, everything, relaunching, redoing, and where fans are like, where do we go? We're lost. New readers are so overwhelmed by it. And so with manga, it's so much simpler. Stories are easier. Plus, the other thing with manga, like I mentioned earlier, is that they have such a diversity in genre and subject matter. In the mainstream, we're all worried about diversity and inclusion,
Right.
you know, and it's like, and we want to make sure everybody's represented, and make sure everybody's included in this, and where the diversity in manga is, if you're into fantasy, there's tons of fantasy novels. There's even, if you're into feet, there's comic books about feet. You know, if you're into sports, there's comic books about sports characters. You'll find it there. There's some trippy stuff, but hey, if I don't make fun of manga, because it's like, if it's not for me, that's cool. But there is going to be some, I can find something for me in manga, and not necessarily in comics, where I like fantasy. And they had stopped making my favorite magazine, which was the Savage Sword of Conan, for the longest time. Then they just now brought it back.
Okay. Let me
Yeah.
ask you, should independents adopt the manga approach to their content?
Oh, as far as like diversity in subject matter.
Yes. And is that the approach that you take as well, like when it comes to Dragon Force? Okay.
Absolutely, Dragon Rage.
I'm sorry, Dragon Rage.
It's okay. I saw the hashtag under
I'm
the
thinking
description.
about the rock band Dragon. Okay.
Yeah. It's cool. It's cool. For the longest time, I had people going, Dragon Age? And like, no, it's Dragon Rage. But and there's a reason why it was called Dragon Rage. It actually pertains to the story. So with manga, they really know how to develop characters. You put a character in a larger than life situation, you make them the underdog. Where in mainstream now, they're so worried about inclusion, and they're so worried about not offending somebody, that they make the character perfect, and the character has no flaws, and you can't relate to that. That's not a real story. That's not a real character. You need to overcome adversity. You need to grow as a character. And manga really seems to have that, and they're so story focused and character focused that's why Demon Slayer is a manga that sold over 100 million copies. When was the last time a comic book sold 100 million copies? It's been a very, very long time since we hit the million mark. And it's because of the type of characters that they develop. In my book, Dragon Rage, everything that's in my book, even my hyper detailed artwork, is there. It's not just like a movie that with really, it's not a Zack Snyder film where it's just flashy cinema and there's no story.
Leave Zack alone, man. Listen, bro. I'm a Snyder bro, man. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Rebel Moon, like,
hey, no, you know what?
It was beautiful, but
it was good to look at. But then when she opens her mouth, it's like,
Yeah, you're like,
Okay.
ah, dang it. Yeah. So, everything in it, I mean, story-wise, everything that's in my book contributes to the story and it helps push the story forward, including the name Dragon Rage. It all ties in when people read issue number 1, which will be out very soon. We'll be able to read it and go, "Oh my god, this is why it's called Dragon Rage." It makes sense.
How much time do you spend on the story first before you get to the ink? Because it seems to me the ink has become more important than the story. If it looks good, flashy, crisp lines, it's like, oh yeah, we'll get it. I'll take it, as opposed to the story development. Because I don't know, maybe independents should take a college course, English lit, um, how to, maybe take a
Yeah.
film course on how to craft a proper story.
Well, when I was boxing, and growing up with a father, is that you need to quickly discover your weaknesses and be aware of your weaknesses because
Okay.
your opponent will exploit your weaknesses and you're gonna hurt, you know? So when it came to creating a comic book, and it's like think of a basketball team, a well-rounded team, you need to have all your, you need to know where your weakest players are. You
Mhm.
need to strengthen those and elevate those weak players. So for me, I knew that my strength lie. I'm a visual storyteller. I can come up with creative, I just let my imagination run and come out with great ideas and stories. And I know it didn't sound humble, but they're
No,
what
man.
else do you call them? You're
Yeah.
excited, And so I come up with all these great ideas, but even though my work can look flashy, I can come up with a great idea. But it's nothing without a story. And I know that I cannot write. I cannot write. And I'm weak. That's my weak
Okay.
area. So I searched for a writer. And I worked with this writer for 2 years before we released Dragon Rage. We
Wow.
went back and forth on story ideas, pitching different ideas. He wrote up, in fact, he's written about 4 different versions of Dragon Rage before the one that we're about to release. And we've also have had others look at the book. We've taken criticism back. We've
Okay.
had people that have been in the industry that we respect, writers, and they've all given their feedback and critique on it, all behind the scenes before we're even going to release it. And we go back and we tweak stuff. And on my end, I've had guys like David Finch, Ethan Van Sciver, Shane Davis, John Malin, guys that have, they've all been Marvel, DC artists, people that I respect. They've all given me feedback and critique on my art. Where some of them, like John Malin, he was pretty harsh. Like but we're friends. He does it in a way where he makes fun of me. And they were kind of joking with me, and Aaron Lepresti and them were there. I drew this rabbit, and they were like, "That rabbit doesn't look like it's close to the camera. It looks like it's a giant rabbit." And I could have easily have just gotten upset and said, "Oh, you guys are making fun of me. It's bad faith. I don't like this." But instead, I said, "You know what? I remembered, like my father saying, you need to, if they make you aware of your weaknesses, you got to be aware of your weakness before you can become stronger and strengthen it.
So,
So
it,
go ahead.
is that should that be the average length of time an average independent should spend on the story per se? Well, not so story, but I guess before they release, or was your method kind of out of the ordinary? Maybe because you could kind of afford to take 2 years to kind of to get it
A-
right per se.
And the only reason I could afford to take 2 years is because of the crowdfunding,
Okay.
because backers invested. Backers took a leap of faith with me and said, "We are going to support you so that you can build and make the best story that you can make and make interesting characters that maybe I'm building a legacy here. Maybe these things will be, around for years to come." Oh,
Okay.
and that was the rabbit, by the way, that we showed on the
That
screen
was the
there. That was the one that they were
that was the
picking
one that
on
was
me
too
about
close.
it. They were like, "Oh my god!" And so what I did was, after they were making fun of me on a stream, but they were doing it in a way when we're friends, and
Mhm.
like the way you would heckle your friend. So after the stream, I said, "You know what? I'm gonna redraw that rabbit. I'm gonna challenge myself to get it right because not only do I want to grow as an artist, but all my backers deserve my best." And I went back and I put in the extra time. And like I said, the only reason I could do that was because of the backer support, people coming in and doing the crowdfunding.
So how many volumes did you flesh out over 2 years? This is just for one project, like, or
Yeah.
that? Okay,
One book, Dragon Rage. We want to stay focused on it. The writer does know where the story is going to go. So what we did was we created an outline. The writer and I, we worked on an outline. So we said, okay, this is where we want the story to begin, and this is where we want it to end. And we have to figure out the in between. We have to discover how to get them from point A to point B.
okay,
And because of backers coming in and giving us their support and supporting us, even though I only had about 3 pages penciled, supported me along the way, I look at it as you could either go pay, you could go pay $5 and get a manufactured comic book that comes off an assembly line. And think of it like you're going out and buying a Hyundai. You're going out, you're getting a Hyundai Sonata, or you're going out, you're getting a Toyota Corolla, quick, manufactured, get you from point A to point B. But that's not my comic book. My comic is a luxury item. It is tailor made. It is a Bentley. It's a Rolls Royce. Where if you, I mean, there's not many of us, not myself, but I do know some people that if you go out and you buy a Bentley, you don't get the Bentley right away. You go
no,
and you put it in your order.
right,
Delivery is 6 months to a year.
yeah.
When you go in, you've been in the music industry. I'm sure you know people that are
Oh
fortunate
yeah.
enough to.
Somebody, and I had a friend that ordered a custom Audi RS3, 18 months. Took him 18 months. Not, no sir, not
Yeah.
me.
Wow. Yeah. 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 No, not me. I mean, but so I tell people is that when you're ordering these comic books from us, from any of the like CG Kings or anybody, in my book especially, you're gonna get a Bugatti is what you're getting. This book has been custom tailor made. I interact with all my backers where they openly can email me. They can inquire about the project, and they do. They'll email me, hey, when am I gonna get this book? And I always reply back. I give updates every month, every 30 days. You get at least one update. I do YouTube videos where you can watch me draw live and see where the progress is. I go on streams like this. I show artwork. So along the way, they offer me feedback and they go, "Hey, what do you think about ever putting this in the campaign?" And I custom tailor that campaign to them, just like you would if you were to go in and order your Bugatti and go, "No, I want ostrich skin for the interior," and they're like, "That's ridiculous," but I want it. They're like, "All right, it's what you want. It's your dollar."
I'm glad you said that because I didn't know it was that painstakingly tedious. Once again, I don't think the average consumer understands the length of time it takes you guys to do this. So until you actually said it, and I'm listening to you, because I would hear other people complain. Well, why is it taking so long? Why has it been a year? It's been 18 months. It's been 2 years, and the creator's like, well, it takes time, but they never actually delved into why it's taking this long. And if I
Yeah,
give you money, I think I've earned the right for transparency. Tell me up front it's going to take 18 months to 2 years.
yeah, and
And once again,
that's
I don't think the average person is told or understands what it takes for you guys to
yeah.
give us the content.
And that's such a great thing you pointed out is transparency. I think, I mean, some of it comes down to personality, but I've learned that from modeling after guys like Ethan, John Malin, these guys. Watching them, they're very transparent. They'll answer questions. They always keep people informed where the project is. And I've realized that. I've watched guys like Aaron Lopresti and who I really admire. And for me, you know, I um, I know what I'm capable of. I know what I could do with my art, and how long it takes me. So, and I've done this before. So I gave an estimated, even though the delivery schedule is still an estimated schedule, because there are things that you'll run into along the way
Mm-hmm.
where I, in the middle of my book, I'm a heart failure patient, because I mentioned earlier I'm a cancer survivor, and they find that the medication and the treatment that I got back in the 1970s was pretty lethal to my heart. So in the middle of it, my heart failure worsened. I almost died. I was literally on death's door, and I was able to recover. So I lost about 6 months there. So my book would have been already completed within 6 months. But when I was able to take 6 months off and just think about my book and
Mhm.
not draw my book, I was able to work on more, to just to look, take an outside look and look at my work. And when I came back after 6 months, got better, I decided that I was going to redraw everything. I scrapped all the artwork.
Oh,
I've
wow.
My book's a 44-page book. I scrapped it, started all over page one. And when I did that, I started showing backers and showing people the new pages. They all went, "Oh my God, how did you get so good so fast?" And so now they joke with me. They do the Blues Brothers thing. They're like, "Oh, Jimmy went over to the other side, came back on a
God.
mission from God," you know. And um, but it was I think some of it too was when I went. If I were to die, I was laying in my hospital bed, going, if I were to die tonight, would this be the project that I want to be remembered? Am I
Okay.
leaving behind the quality? And I really started to think about backers. Yes, I thought about my family. I love you, family. I thought about you too, but I really did think about my backers, and I started to think, would they go? Am I getting the value of my dollar? Because we all know, like, that a transaction happens when the perceived value that you received is greater than what your payout
Right.
is,
Right.
right? So, yes, my book is $25 for a 44-page book, but I want my backers, when they receive it, I want them to go, "Oh my God, that's a Bugatti. Like,
Yeah.
this is what a comic book should be." And that is so important to me. I want them happy. There's nothing else. Sure, I want to make a living at this eventually. Right now, the dollars aren't my main focus right now. My main focus is I need to give my backers the best project, for their dollars. I want them excited about this book when they get it.
How long should the average independent spend on their project if they can't afford to do it the Jimmy Reyes way?
Oh, you mean almost die and take 6 months off?
I don't want to frame it like that,
Yeah,
but I
yeah, yeah.
mean, if you had to tell a young gun, hey, I'm going to put out a project, Mr. Reyes, well, how long do you think I should take before I put it out?
Honestly, I think as long as you need, and like you said, being transparent with your backers. I think, see, the thing is, you have the veterans that have been in the comic book industry for a long time that are very aware of what they can do, that they know, how to what they're capable of. But I don't want to scare away the newcomers, because I think the new blood, even YouTubers, the new blood of them coming in, especially if they're passionate about this craft,
Mm-hmm.
not the ones that are just doing, for the sake of it being a merch on their channel, but for those that really love this craft, can bring in new ideas. New blood is great. So if you're a new creator and you're unaware of what you're capable of, if you're not sure, if you've never drawn a comic before, honestly, I had never drawn a comic before. I've been an inker. I had never drawn a full comic book before.
Well, can you elaborate to us very quickly? What is the difference?
Yeah, so what can happen is there are a lot of obstacles along the way. When you're as a penciler, as an artist, you're given a story, a script. If you've never drawn every situation out there, it's gonna feel it's your first time doing something. You're gonna struggle, right? But with repetition, you become more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
You become more efficient. So those veterans already have worked through all that. They've worked through all the scenarios. They've drawn a situation where there's a guy walking a dog, and suddenly this giant monster comes out of the ground, and you're like, "Oh my God, how do I draw that? How do I draw a dog?"
Okay,
You know,
right, right.
and what kind of, um, and so, for these newcomers, they're not aware of that, so it takes them longer. It takes them longer. It's took me longer, like a bunny rabbit. Dude, have you ever? Why would I ever have drawn a bunny rabbit? It's my first time. I've never been asked to draw a bunny rabbit.
Yeah.
But it was in the script. And so I'm gonna do it. I'm not gonna deviate from the script because I've never drawn my fear of drawing or learning to draw something. I need to tell the best story possible. So if I don't know how to do it, I'm gonna learn how to do it, and that time that it takes to learn how to do it takes time. And so for these new creators, like I said, I mean, there's still a lot to be learned.
Um, this is probably, I would say, geeks, gamers, nerds have never had more eyes on them than this moment here. And when I mean this moment, Comicsgate, EVS, Ethan, Neurotic, Drinker, all of you guys. This is probably the most popular across the board. I think you this that sector has ever been ever. Now it's almost kind of cool to say, yeah, I read comics and yeah, I'm into anime and I do games and the optics. What would you like to see improved, and then where would you like to see the optics moving forward with you know the, with you guys is because you love the sector, the space.
Yeah.
What would you like to see moving forward, and how coupled with the eyes that you guys have, because right now you guys, everyone's listening to everything you have to say, like everybody.
Yeah, like I mean, we joked earlier about when my ex-wife walked in the comic book studio with me, and she was like, "I'm in nerd headquarters. This is nerd headquarters," and she was the only woman I think ever to walk in that studio or that office, probably the first one. But that's not uncommon today. Now you can walk down the street and you see girls, young girls wearing Marvel, little T-shirt that says Marvel on it on there. You see tons of manga. You see some, just there's tons of stuff out there. And they're making movies now. We got D&D movie,
Mm-hmm.
out there, and there, it's huge. And it's almost become cool to be a geek, be a nerd. Where back in the day it was just a couple of guys in the basement playing D&D,
Yeah,
in your mom's basement. I would like what I'd like to see it go is I would love this is would be in the perfect world for me is that I would love to see new people, more people, these new people that are coming in. I I don't like when people try to go alpha nerd and
okay,
claim to be the biggest fan,
okay.
and they're like, or I see a YouTuber and behind them they've got this huge shelf showing the massive collection. Look at all my
Oh my
DC
god,
and
yes.
Marvel graphic novels. Look at all my action figures. Aha, you should listen to me. And I'm like, dude, I've been in the comics since the 90s. I've been in the anime. I've read manga. I mean, I started with a company that was producing, Antarctic Press was producing primarily manga. And, I've been around this stuff, but I don't need to flash it behind me and show this stuff.
That's
So
like
I
the
would,
standard backdrop, man. I mean, you picked her out,
yeah,
and they continue. I'm
I,
sorry.
I just don't like where people are trying to like flex and claim and look at me, I'm the biggest. It's like, hey, you know what? It doesn't matter. Don't, because then what's going to do is that's just going to detour and make people nervous about wanting to get in the industry. Going, well, oh my god, if I try to get into comic books, they're going to call me a fake geek girl. Where do I start?
Yeah,
And they're going to say, oh, you're not a true hardcore fan. No, welcome everybody. And you should be excited to introduce the people. We should be excited about the people that don't know anything about, you know. We're like, hey, have do you ever read any Wolverine? You don't know who Wolverine is? Come on in. Oh my God, you're in the right place. I got some Barry Windsor Smith back here, Weapon X. Oh, I loved it. You're gonna love it too, And I mean, I do that. I let people whenever people come to my house, and I like my wife and her friends and their husbands come over and they're like, comic books. What is that? I'm like, oh, dude, you like it? Here, take this,
yeah.
take it. Read it, man. I mean, I want to welcome people. That's how we're gonna grow. That's what I would love to see. I would love to see people welcoming just newbies, in here.
Okay, I kind of want to shift gears. I want to talk about more behind the scenes diversity, because I spoke with Jordan and Jay Dolo, Generation Geek, and there seems to be a lack of diversity behind the panels, behind the pencils, behind the ink. Has it gotten better in your eyes? The progression, or do we still have a long way to go? Because
Well,
a lot of people that complain about not being shown and their stories being told are the
yeah.
ones that's not being showed and their stories not being told. So, do you suggest more creators or more people get behind the scenes and become decision makers to help close that gap?
When you're saying diversity, do you mean like in minorities, like in race,
Yes. Yeah.
or
Yeah.
oh, okay. Well, I mean, we've had black creators that have been around, but I honestly, when I was getting into comic books, I really didn't care what the diversity or what the race was, sexuality, sexual preference, or whatever. I just cared about the character. I didn't care about, but we had Luke Cage, and Luke Cage was co-created by Billy Graham.
Hmm.
Not Billy Graham, the Christian minister guy. Billy Graham he was an artist. He was an inker, and he's black, inker and black artist and writer, and he was a
Hmm.
playwright. Even did some acting, but he also was involved in the first the Luke Cage stuff.
Hmm.
And then we also had Saber. Saber was also a black character. I know people, when they always think of characters, they always right away go to Black Panther or the stuff from Milestone. They go, oh, Static, which became Static X as a cartoon, or there was like, what was hardcore or Hardwire was one of them, the
Yeah.
Milestone stuff. And so I know that those are the characters that people always go to, but there's been that we've been diversity. And Billy Graham, the reason I bring him up was Archie Goodwin hired him to work with him, and he hired him as an art director when he was working for Warren Publishing on Vampirella. And that's the reason why I know about Billy Graham is mostly because I'm a big Vampirella.
Okay.
I love the Warren magazine stuff, the black and white stuff. But we've had that in there. And then there was like, for me, Salim Crawford was the inker, and Ryan Benjamin, and they're both black. And I follow a lot of, for myself, I admire a lot of the Spanish artists. We know him as Jose Gonzalez, but his nickname is Pepe Gonzalez. In Spain, he was Pepe Gonzalez. He was also a fantastic artist on Vampirella. There's a huge diversity that's out there. And there was a company called Lion Forge that was black owned. They weren't the first
Right.
black owned publication. The actual first black owned publication was back in the 30s, and it was called. I know the beginning part, but I don't want to just say that and then not. But it was actually called Negro Club or something like that. You guys can Google it. I'm not. I mean, that's actually the title of it, and it was an entire creative team that was all black creators. It was the first, and then we had like Milestone that came in. Then we
Right.
had Lion Forge.
Right.
Lion Forge came after them. Lion Forge eventually sold to Magnetic Press out there. The chat saying, "Say it, Jimmy.
Hey,
Say it."
Jimmy, say.
But yeah, you can Google it, guys. That's the title. That's what they named it. And it was basically it was Lion Man. It was the character. Was the character from I think it was Negro Press or something like that. But it was Lion Man was a character. It was way before Black Panther. It was called Lion Man. I mean, I don't know if it was a great character or not. But so you've had all these type of companies out there. What we haven't had is what I would like to see, but I don't really see the reason for it. For me, is, I mean, I guess we haven't had an all Latino creative team.
Okay.
I mean, company. I don't think. But honestly, for me, when it comes to like sports, or when it comes to creative, anything in the creative field, I don't care what your race is. I don't care what your sexual preference is. I want the best and the strongest for that position to make the best well-rounded team.
Okay.
That's really all I care about.
How long should independents stay independent? And I'm only basing that against my time in the business because everyone wants to be independent. But I'm like, when the labels come calling, at the end of the day, everybody wants their name in lights. You want the prestige and cachet to be saying, I'm signed to a major label. Would that be the same for indie artists? Like, is the ultimate goal still to work for either Image, DC, Marvel? Would you would
I
you would you advise young creators or just create an independent whatever? Say, you know what, maybe go test your waters with the big dogs at some point.
For me, I think I could never tell another artist where they should go.
Okay.
I can only share my experience with them, and they've got to make their own decision. I mean, it's their career, their life. But I worked at Marvel. I worked on the a young readers version of the Avengers called Marvel Action Avenger,
Okay.
and I was on that book, but I didn't get canceled. A lot of guys got canceled in the mainstream and then came over to CG or crowdfunding. I willingly left the mainstream, and I'm still good friends, with Dave Finch, and he still likes me to ink his books and stuff. But I left, and the reason that I left is I didn't feel that that was my place in mainstream. I at one time I wanted to work on characters, and I was super excited that when I worked on Avengers, that we had Black Panther was in there, we had Captain Marvel, we had Captain America, we had, there was just such a wide variety of characters that there was young girls were coming up to me on the book going, oh, I love this, Captain Marvel's in there, and
Hmm.
people are like, oh, Black Panther, and others are, Captain America. It was like something for everybody was in that book, and it was a great experience. I really enjoyed it, but I felt, for me, my home, my family is really when I came into CG into
Okay.
crowdfunding, because here's the other part of the horror story that we started with is that I was a comic book inker, and I was constantly reminded by editorial everywhere in the comic book industry that I was expendable, that I was nobody. I was an inker, you know, and that I should be thanking them for the work. That's what.
Wow.
Yeah, and I would put in long hours. I would get very little sleep to make deadlines. I always turned in my work on time. I never missed a deadline since 1991 as an
Hmm.
inker. Never missed a deadline. Whenever you needed me and you needed that work, I got it done. You know, and what did it get me? Nothing. No, it didn't really even. No thank yous. Nothing. I mean, yeah, it was so they were so quick to dismiss me and get rid of me as an inker. But when I came into CG, these guys treated me like I was a rock star. You know, they saw my ink before they even knew I could draw. Because nobody in CG knew I could draw because I hadn't really drawn anything. I was just inking, and I was inking over different artists within Comicsgate, and the fans loved it. They appreciated me, and I had never experienced that before.
Okay.
You know, I went, "Oh my god, wow." And now that I'm drawing and penciling, these guys they're going like, they're the ones that are really motivating me. They're going, "Oh my god, Jimmy's," they call me Jimmy King. They don't call me because my last name means Kings, and I'm on CG Kings. So in CG, they'll call me Jimmy King. And so they always go, "Jimmy King, his art is fire," or whatever. And I just go, man, that means so much to me because they don't realize I spend 14 hours a day. And like when you're producing music, sure, when people listen to it, they rave about it. But
Oh
while you're
God.
producing it, you're struggling and then you have doubt.
Yeah.
But they don't see that. That's all behind the scene.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So that's how it is for me with art. They don't realize there's some stuff like that rabbit. That was a struggle. It was pretty hard. There were moments where I was doubting myself. But then when I get the reaction from fans, I love that. I love that. It's encouraging.
I'm looking at your the panels, and instantly I got heavy metal vibes. Like I hate to tell my age, but you might be a little older than me. But for me, heavy metal was everything. Like I don't. For those that didn't grow up with the heavy metal comics, um, and even the Canadian animated film, that to me is like standard. Maybe because the busty women and the man with the swords, but that was to me like the
Yeah, yeah.
standard. You know what I'm saying? And I'm looking at this like, yo, this reminds me of heavy metal, and I'm like, I'm instantly attached and drawn to it because it takes me back to a good place for me in my childhood, even though we weren't supposed to have those comics to begin with because they were, had a mature rating. Well, even before they had a mature rating, they had it in a brown paper bag. You just couldn't go up into the and I love it. It gives me those vibes, and to me, that's the best compliment I can give you right now because it takes me back to a good place in my childhood. And like I said, the heavy man every month. I don't know how them shits was like $10. I mean, them shits
Yeah.
were not cheap. I didn't have a
Yeah.
job, and if I did have a little job, yeah. So
Yeah. Heavy metal back in the day, I mean, they had so many great artists that were
yeah,
contributing, and they weren't afraid to draw their women sexy and
yes,
attractive.
yes,
They weren't trying to hide the feminine, beauty of the feminine and female anatomy, and they weren't afraid to make the men masculine. and make the men strong and tough, you know.
So let me
And
ask you: is that missing? Is that part? Is that element from
yeah,
comics missing?
oh yeah, there's you know there's so many comics today that like there's talk about they're trying to call Conan and say that that it's toxic masculinity,
Yeah.
that but I think Conan was, for one, Conan's fantasy, but the other thing is too, it was, there's nothing wrong with being a man and a man being strong and being tough. I think what they're people are confused what toxic masculinity is.
Yeah.
They see a strong man and they think, oh, toxic masculinity. No, anybody can be toxic. you know I mean, if there's, it's a problem with the individual, but it's nothing wrong with masculinity.
Hmm.
People shouldn't call that toxic or anything. I'm bringing that. I mean, Dragon Rage, I'm bringing back the masculine men character wielding swords. They're badass, the beautiful sexy women. That's my thing in my book, in Dragon Rage. And we're not afraid to show the beautiful sexy females. I drew this one cover, and I got some backlash from woke people, where from leftists and stuff, where because I drew my character with a booty.
Wow.
Yeah, and some people were like, "No, I can't back that book simply because she's got a booty." You know?
How many times can one draw from the wokeness well before it runs dry?
Oh man, I don't. None of these woke projects are actually making any money. People aren't buying these books. They aren't buying the woke books, and I think primarily because, I mean, one, they don't know how to they tell the hero story. You
Okay.
know, where in Dragon Rage, I mean, it's not really superhero, but it is a hero story. It's a hero's journey. We get to meet characters that kind of like, think about Luke Skywalker. He was a farm boy, and George Lucas knew about the hero's journey, where he doesn't start out and become a Jedi. Where now they're trying to make, you got like a lot of feminist agenda where they're like, oh, this female character, she's starts out right away, she's a Jedi. There's no
Yeah.
there's no journey. She doesn't overcome any adversity or anything. And with George Lucas and Star Wars, Luke Skywalker was a farm boy. He didn't know. He was a lot of doubt along the way. He makes mistakes and he grows, and he's a relatable character. And that's what people want to see. People want to be placed into an adventure. Like, that's why you would play D&D. D&D was because it would be an amazing adventure, larger than life, and you were with friends and companions. And that's what I want to bring in Dragon Rage. I want people, when they read it, it's a story that they read and they can live vicariously through and experience the group of companions and friends that are made in the world of Dragon Rage, and living their adventure alongside with them, like in the never-ending story. Where Fred Savage is the little boy, his grandfather's reading the story, but we, the viewers, get to experience the story
Hmm.
that the grandfather's telling this young kid at bedtime about the never-ending story. And it's an adventure about the hero's journey, and how he eventually, he grows and he overcomes all these obstacles, and he's the underdog, and eventually, he becomes, the hero at the end. And that's what the comic book should be. you know
How do you feel about the state of comics moving forward with the new blood? The young guys you see coming in, does it give you hope? You feel like it's going in the right direction, or do you feel like it's still some work from the elders to kind of? We still got some jobs not finished. Y'all
yeah.
wait. Let us finish what we started, and then we'll pass the torch on to you guys. How do you
Sorry,
see it?
some of the chat's so polite. They go, "That's the Princess Bride, dummy." That's the way they treat me. But they're right. They're right. But they mean it well. They mean well. But the delivery, man, these guys, they don't let anything slide. Like, one time, Ethan asked me, about Green Arrow, and he gave me the name of Green Arrow and Hawkeye, right? Like Clint Barton. And I was like, it was early in the morning, and I thought he was talking about, I know a Clayton Barton. And then he goes, "Yeah, what do you think about that archer?" And I go, "Oh, I didn't know he was an archer." They still don't let me live that down because I didn't know Hawkeye's secret identity. I mean, I knew it, but I had that brain fart.
It was early, man. Yeah, it
Yeah.
takes a minute.
Oh yeah, Princess
Jeez.
Bride, not the Neverending Story, where Fred Savage is, and he's telling them the story. But you guys knew what I'm talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, my guys aren't harsh. Your guys come in here like, God damn it, you know this stuff.
Yeah, yeah, and they're not gonna let me live it down. It's gonna be in my chat on my live streams every time. They're gonna ask me about the Princess Bride or something. They're gonna be these dudes are harsh, man. These guys are. But I'm sorry, you were asking a
No,
question about the current state of the
do
new
you
blood.
do you feel the elders, you guys, still have more work to do before you pass the torch to the young guys?
You know, um, I used to go back to a lot of the comics long before my generation. My generation was the '90s, and that's when like the J. Scott Campbells were coming in, David Finch was coming in, and those are my peers.
Mhm.
I'm relatively the same age as those guys, and I think with I don't know about you, being in the music industry, I relate this because you said music. Like in the music industry, I felt like the music that was written, like Elvis was writing stories. It was lyrics that told stories. They were beautiful. They were good romantic stories,
Mhm.
right? In song format. Today, his music is like, "I'll slap a hoe," and, I'll, you know what I mean? "Give me my dollar." "Oh, you ain't good. You don't treat me well. I'm a princess. Next," or whatever.
Oh yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean? It's like,
yeah.
where's the it's like, is that really the lyric? I was listening to one that my wife was listening to in the car the other day, and I don't mean to throw her under the bus, but the song was, "I killed my ex, something I wanna kill my ex," or something like that. It was something about that, and I do it, I forget, and that was the lyric. Just like your face, I was driving my car, like, scared of my wife, like, "You know I love you, right? You know I never hurt you, right?"
I never.
I was scared. She's well, my wife's taller than me. I mean, she's skinny and real petite, but
Okay.
I'm like, I was still scared, like, "Oh my god, what do we listen to?" That's a song, right? That's just fantasy. That's a funny song. But yeah, so I feel like the same thing with art, with creators. Like back in the day, these artists, they had great visions, creations. It was a great craft, and I think slowly it's diminishing.
Mhm.
I think now with digital art coming in, artists learning on a digital tablet rather than first learning. I first learned on pencil and paper, drawing with whatever I had. I mean, I would draw with a crayon if that was all I had. And I think today these artists that are starting to just trace right over 3D assets, they're trying to skip
Okay.
the foundation that will help build you later into a strong artist. This new generation is trying to skip that. We're in the world of self gratification where we want instant self gratification. So they're
Mhm.
trying to instantly become better than a Jim Lee who's been doing this for 40 years. They want to be better than an Ethan Van Sciver, and they want to skip steps. And I think that starts to diminish the talent. And then what happens is that's all that's coming out because our generation is eventually going to be, we're going to die out. We're going to be gone. And that's all that's coming out. And that's all that people are exposed to. And that becomes the standard. And people no longer realize that, the art has lost. We've lost something in the art form.
So you are you admitting that that will come to fruition? That will be a missing art form of the art per se. With everything becomes more digital, more AI, more almost cookie cutter to kind of craft
It's
the imagery with the stories.
as far as like in the comic book industry, it's definitely a fear of mine because comic books, if we continue doing the monthly comic books where we're just mass producing, they're manufactured, we're just putting out Hyundai after Hyundai after Hyundai, and people there, and the page rates get lower, and you got to work faster, and you got to find faster ways to do it. So you just put out 3D assets, and you're just putting pasting art or AI out there. And I think that's why when I go back to, why I believe that in this movement and I believe that crowdfunding is going to help save this industry. It's definitely going to help it keep it alive because we're able to, because of backers coming in and believing in us and backing us, we're able to keep quality in art. We're able to keep quality comic books and story out there where people can look at that and compare it to what's coming out on in mainstream or other people and hold our books as the standard
Okay.
and go and hopefully comic fans out there will go, no, I if your book's not up at the par of Cyberfrog's, not up there at the par of Godlike or Jimmy's Dragon Rage, then it's not a good comic. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So yeah, I'm gonna say I'm gonna do everything that I can possibly uh to not let that happen, to not let the art form diminish, you know.
that's what's up. All right, let me get to these super chats real quick, and I got one last question before I let you
Yeah,
get up
yeah.
out of here because I know you are a busy, super busy man. Necessary, thank you for the 5 on the super chat. We're not women. Hashtag still needed today. Gab, thank you for
That
the
was
5 on
my
the super
oh,
chat. Fantastic
oh,
interview, fun and interesting, genuine guest. Go Jimmy, go Jimmy. Yeah,
wow, thank
your
you.
people showed up for sure.
Wow.
Um, Necessary, she asks, how has his health impacted his craft?
Yeah, I mean, it's to where it really made me aware of my mortality. You know, it made me aware of when I'm gone, what am I leaving? What am I leaving behind? You know, and I want to build something for my family. You have a video about generational wealth,
Mhm.
and I watched that last live stream you did where there are people that are well, you can't say groomed anymore. People that are built to eventually take over the family business,
Right.
to eventually run that. And I look at guys, for me, that I look at guys like Todd McFarlane. He created Spawn, and Spawn eventually became large enough to become a movie. He was able to build a Todd McFarlane Productions and Todd McFarlane's toys. His daughter now works there. His daughter, Cici or Cecil, or I forget her name.
Okay.
But anyway, she works there at the toy company now, and she's working there with him. And eventually, that's his legacy. He's leaving her a toy company. So for me, I want something like that for my children. I have a granddaughter who's almost a teenager, and I go, now, if I take this seriously, I could call it a product, have it all up and ready, get people to back it. Sure, I can make millions of dollars for me, but what is that going to leave for my future offsprings, future generation? You know, if if the story quality isn't there, if these aren't like, I mean, if these aren't quality characters or interesting characters, it's just gonna I'm gonna make I can make a couple million real quick, and I'll spend it in my lifetime.
Right.
You know, it'll be gone. But if I take the time, and this is when I became aware, when I was sick, and I thought, what am I leaving behind? If I can create something great, if I can create another Star Wars, if I can create another Harry Potter, something that generations can connect with and love, then I can leave something for my children that they could. I mean, look at the Tolkien family.
Yeah.
They shouldn't have licensed out Rings of Power to Amazon, but I mean, hey, but it left them money,
They
right?
cut a
I mean,
big check. Hey, I'm not. I get it. I get
yeah,
it.
you got $4 billion. You got $1 billion on that, so and I want that. I want I want this to be a good IP that can stand around over time, and that my children eventually can inherit.
Awesome. Roscoe, thank you for the 5 on the super chat. He asks, what are some of your favorite comic and manga artists? Are there any who inspired your art style?
Oh man. Well, I mean, primarily when it comes to comics, my style that's obvious is David Finch. Dave is the one that took me under his wing. He showed me a lot of stuff. I like John Buscema. I like Travis Charest. When it comes to manga, I'm really big into. I really love. Back in the '90s, Blade of the Immortal was one of the first mangas that I really dove into. I loved it. It was a new creator, a young creator, and he created this book, this manga book, which is now has become an animated series, an anime. It's become TV series. So yeah, I'm real big into him. There's also another guy, and you guys probably have never heard of him. But if you guys ever get a chance, the book is just out. It just came out, and it's right here. Okay, so Boichi is the name of the mangaka, right? That's his pen name, and the book's called Origin. So if you guys have this, I'd highly recommend getting it. They reprinted it. They're bringing it back to the U.S. I have the Spanish version,
Okay.
so mine's in Spanish. but I want to work on my Spanish. I'm not that great
You a little
at
rusty? A little
I'm a
rusty.
little rusty. Yeah. But this is one right here, and his art style. I'll try not to find something that's not too graphic, but this guy, man, this guy can draw. Like when it comes to mangas, I'd highly recommend anybody who's getting into manga check out Boichi. If you're only used to Western art, but you want to have a crossover,
Mhm.
and so you want to find something kind of like when you like pop music. If say like you're into rap, but you want to find something a little more R&B, but so you got like pop right in the middle.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's more a little bit. You kind of get a little rap, and that's like this guy. You know, he's
Okay.
got a little bit of that Western style.
Last super chat before I ask you the final question. Casual pedantic. Thank you for the 5 on the super chat. Appreciate it. Appreciate it. Okay. IP farming. It seems to be a real thing, a real trend. I personally, I understand it behind the scenes, corporate wise, whatever. As a fellow creative, independent, that's scary to me. What are your thoughts on that?
When you're saying IP farming, you're thinking about are you referring to when they just create something that they want to try to take out and get licensed
Yeah,
to get it as a TV show or
yeah,
um the thing is like I like I get the as a business person, you know, I've admired a lot of people like I said, they came in with the independence. I mean, I still admire what that Ben Dunn was able to sustain his company for so long, being
hmm,
completely independent. Todd McFarlane, things like that. I get the idea of where you create an IP, and where you're really going to make the money, where the money in comic books, where you're really going to make the money is in licensing that IP.
right,
Think of Ninja Turtles. Ninja Turtles, it was an independent little book, but when they licensed it and it became an animated series and it became bed sheets and pillows and toys, that's where these guys became millionaires,
yeah,
right? That's where you're going to be really rich. So if I were to say that I wouldn't be open to licensing my IP, I'd be lying to you guys, because I have to eat and I'm thinking of my family. I want my family. I want the IP big enough, like I said, and I can leave it as a legacy to my family. But I'm still a creator. I'm still an artist. So because I'm so held so close to it, and I care so much about the characters and story, it would depend on. I wouldn't just give it away easily. It would be really hard
big
for me to
check.
just go,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
It either has to be a really big check,
I understand.
it, or a really good creator like Guillermo del Toro, who did Hellboy, and somebody that I know is going to get this,
Yes.
and do a really good job with it. Yeah. So I mean, I think IP farming as well. Like, I mean, there are people that think about Disney, like where Disney has Mickey Mouse, and they keep evolving and changing the format. Like Mickey Mouse was hand drawn, and then it became 3D animation. Then they're
Yeah.
trying to make it a live action, right? With all their IPs, they're trying to keep it relevant. What it is it's their cash cow. It's bringing in money,
Hmm.
and if they want to keep milking that cash cow, that's what they're trying to do, and that's what they did with Star Wars. It's a cash cow. They just milking that cash cow. They no longer cared about the quality anymore, and I think that's where they just cared about the dollars. And I go back to fans first. You got to respect the fans, because if not, that cash cow went dry. Nobody's going back to Star Wars. I mean,
Okay.
I love Star Wars, but I'm not gonna go back
Let
to it.
me let me play devil's advocate, and I'll let you go. I promise. I worked
Yeah.
in customer service. Are the customers, are the fans, are they always right?
Well, when I say, you know, fans that buy the product, right? Of referring to, like, the videos of movies, or fans that are actually are buying and reading the comic book.
Mhm.
Their opinions are great, and I would certainly listen to those people. But it's the day of social media. You're gonna have people that feel that their opinion matters the most, and everybody should listen to them,
Yes. Yeah.
and they don't even watch the movie, the series. They're not, but they want to give their opinion about it, or they just saw the trailer. And I see tons of these YouTubers coming out with, oh, this new movie is harsh. It's horrible. Hollywood is going. I'm like, wait a minute. Did they get an advanced look at this? Because from what I've heard, the movie's not even completed yet.
Yeah.
And I like those opinions. I just ignore those. But
Okay.
but but the people that are really hardcore into it, and you can really start to tell based on the feedback they're giving about it. Where I was watching one YouTuber who was just tearing up the new Crow trailer, but they had never even seen the
You've
1994
never seen
Crow
the.
with Brendan Lee. Mm-mm. Or anything in between. And I was like, what are you doing? Like, you don't know anything about the Crow. you know, it's not your genre.
Yeah.
Find something else, critique.
I seen it. I was like, I'll hold judgment till I actually see it because I grew up. I
Yeah,
remember when Brandon got killed on the set. I remember. I mean, those are like I grew up with that stuff. So
yeah,
I'll reserve judgment because I don't want to be that. This is the bar, and goddamn it, if you don't hit this bar, that's it. Anything below it is trash. Even like with the Dune movies, I still hold the '84 version. I
yeah,
love it.
yeah.
Even though
Patrick Stewart in there,
yeah,
and
even though it's
he still
all
looks the same age.
right, I learned all the behind the scenes drama and how they butchered it, the studios, and I still love that version of
Yeah,
Dune. Like I will not ever talk bad about it. So,
yeah. Just because we have the this newer version doesn't mean to go back and bash it.
yeah.
Yeah, I own both in
Okay.
4K,
Okay.
and so I'm real. I love watching this stuff. He's the creator. If we didn't have Dune, then we wouldn't have Star Wars
No Star
because
Wars. No Warhammer. None of that.
yep,
Yeah.
George Lucas and everybody, they were all inspired by the work that he was putting out his book and everything. And
Mr. Reyes, I've
yeah,
taken far too much of your time. It's like listening to an old sage and just soaking up all this wisdom.
well,
Thank you so much. Please, shout out your Indiegogo project one more time for the people. Where can they find you? All that good stuff, man.
yeah. Oh, and someone was saying the 84 was not book accurate. I know that. I know
We
the
know
true
that, but we
fans
don't
of the book
stop it.
are. I know, but I still enjoy the movie. I
Yeah,
still enjoy it.
yeah.
But anyway, yeah, people, if you guys want to come on over, I also have a YouTube where I show art. I do live draw streams. You guys can watch. If you back the book, you can also watch me actually drawing pages of the book, so that people know where I'm at. And I want people to be able to see what they've invested in, what they're getting. Or if you're not sure, you're on the fence, come over to my YouTube channel. It's Jimmy Reyes Art Videos on YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter on there and stuff. And I'm starting a new channel where I'm going to be talking about pop culture and talking about movies. Starting a new show, but on the same channel. So you just
I'm there for
subscribe to
that.
the one
I'm there for
channel.
that. I think that's it's getting to the point where you can't help but talk about it at this point. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, well, what happened was like I would come out on other live streams with other people, and I would kind of just say a little quiet about my opinion about certain things, and people were starting to ask me like, "Do you read comics or do you watch?" Because you don't say anything about them, and I'm like, "Oh, do I watch this stuff? I live this stuff." Like, yes, I'm a big movie nerd, and yes, I mean I read tons of stuff, and so I'm like going to start a channel now where I'm actually going to share my opinion with people, and people might not like it. Like there's some people out there going, the 84 Dune isn't book accurate, but I'll tell you why I liked it.
yeah.
I'll share that with
I
you.
can't wait for that. Can't wait for that. The man, the myth, the legend, Jimmy Reyes, sir. Thank you for your time. I definitely would love to have you back. Definitely. I will definitely support. Everybody go support the Indiegogo project. Um, I'm an instant fan. And I look forward to all your future endeavors, man. Got a place here. You got a place here. So,
Thank you, man. I
hey,
appreciate that.
hey, no, thank you, because like I said, when I saw you in chat, like that ain't him. Somebody's trolling. That's not him.
No, I watched your video, and to be honest, I thought you were the guest. I
Okay.
thought the guy to your right was the host, and I started watching and going, oh, wait a minute, he's the host.
Yeah,
And I went, oh my,
we kind of do like a buddy system, but it's just on my channel. But that's my guy, Red Sings the Blues. So
oh,
yeah. So that's my other crab in the barrel that we
okay,
talk
because you
bad
did call
about
my
people.
co-host. You did say my co-host,
So
and
yes,
I was
um,
like, oh, wait a minute, but I loved it. I love your content. I go through and I still been watching some of
I
your
appreciate that.
going
I'm
back to
humble.
your library.
Thank
You
you,
have good
thank
stuff,
you.
man. I really like it.
Yeah. So sir, by all means, get out of here. Go. I know you got a ton of work to do.
Yeah.
Definitely,
Well,
I'll keep in touch with you, and thank you for coming through once again.
no
Jimmy
problem. I
Reyes,
got to take the
everybody.
beautiful wife out to lunch, man. Poor thing.
Hey, yes, you better
We're
before she
hungry,
plays
so
that
we're gonna
song
go eat.
again. Have a good one, sir.
You too. Thank you.
Yep. All right, y'all. The pivot continues. The pivot continues. I gotta go to the gym. I'll be back with the young gun, JB Abomination. I think that's the title he goes by. So I'll be back in a couple hours. More comic stuff. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thank you everybody that came through to donate, and please support his project, Jimmy Reyes' project. So definitely, I'm looking forward to that. That being said, I'll see y'all in a couple hours. Peace.